Having grown up through the mid-1980s, I had the opportunity to play very many different Marshall amps. At the time, the JCM 800 series was very popular. Moving through when I started teaching at a music store when I was about 16 years old, they always had a stock of JCM 900s, which I would always steal and bring down to my teaching room to play through. So I had the opportunity to play very many Marshall rigs growing up, but I never really owned many of them. I did finally get my first Marshall rig in, I'm going to guess, around the early 90s, and it was actually that rack system modular JMP1 preamp into their tube power amp at the time, into a Marshall 212 cab with Celestion greenback speakers. And I really fell in love with that rig, but it just never felt like it was a true Marshall, if you know what I mean. So people who follow my channel know that I'm a huge user of the Line 6 Helix. I enjoy modelers. I find them very convenient, but sometimes it's fun to just turn up a guitar amp and go. So I recently acquired this Marshall Studio series. Now I'm a little late to the game on these. I believe these have been out for a few years. What Marshall has basically done is they've kind of recreated three iconic amps from years gone past. They have their old Marshall Plexi, which I believe they call the Studio Vintage. They have the Studio Jubilee, which is a remake of their original Silver Jubilee amp. And they also have the Studio Classic, which is a recreation of their JCM 800 lead series. Now, I got an itch to get myself a little Marshall, and as I was perusing their website to see what the new offerings were, because it's really not something I looked into recently. They do have some hand-wired series and some vintage reissues, but the Studio series really piqued my interest. They're basically lower wattage versions, coming in at 20 watts with the ability to also switch down to only 5 watts. Now, before you think that this is going to make it a great bedroom amp, these things are silly loud still, even on the 5-watt setting. They work really well. I'm going to take you through a bunch of examples of how this actually sounds in a few moments. But the local store around here had two of them in stock. They had the Plexi version and they had the JCM 800 version. I went in fully expecting to walk out with the Plexi version, and guess what? I didn't. I have the JCM 800, and I gotta say, this just rips. I've played through it for a few minutes here. Today, I'm gonna play you some sounds. It's gonna be the Studio Classic going into my Rev 212 cabinet, which is loaded with Celestion Vintage 30s. And I was gonna take a DI out of this and play it through some impulse responses, but I thought, you know what? No, let's go really old school here. I have my Cascade Fathead ribbon mic, miking up the cabinet, going into my Warm Audio WA273 mic preamp with no EQ added, no compression added. So what you're going to hear is guitar into this head, into the cabinet, picked up by the Cascade Fathead mic into the Warm Audio mic pre, and we're going to print it to, shall we say, tape. So that's what you're going to hear today. But first and foremost, let's go take a look and see what the features are of this amp. So I've downloaded the manual here so we can just see what features and controls the SC20H, which is what I have here. There is also the SC20C, which is the combo. The H stands for head, the C stands for combo. Basically a slightly different layout, but the same functionality. So we have a power and a standby switch. Now, the standby switch is interesting. When it's in the center position, it is on standby. We can switch it to low for 5-watt performance, or we can switch it to high for 20-watt performance. The rest of the front panel is pretty self-explanatory. We have a presence control, bass, middle, and treble, which is going to be our tone stack. It's going to control how we dial in the EQ of this amp. We have the master control here over at number 7, which is going to be controlling how much we push that power amp section. And then we have the preamp control, and we will look at all of those and see how they sound. We also have a high and low sensitivity input. Going to get much less gain if we're using the low. We're going to get much more gain if we're using the high. All pretty self-explanatory. We go to the back panel. We have numerous loudspeaker outputs. We have a 1x16 ohm, or 1x8 ohm, or 2x16 ohm, and 1x4 ohm, or 2x8 ohm. So lots of possibilities of running different cabinets. We also have a DI out, and we have a switchable effects loop. So really nice that they've added the effects loop if we want to add some delay or some reverb into our sound, and we can turn that on and off. So very, very cool layout, very simple and very effective. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but I think the important thing is, how does this sound? So I'm going to take us through some settings on the amp with both my Gibson Les Paul Standard, and then I'm going to switch over to my Vigier Expert Strat style guitar. So you can hear this with some single coil pickups and with some humbucker pickups. Normally I would play my Vigier guitars. I'm going to play a Les Paul just because I know I'm going to get comments that you should have played a Les Paul through the Marshall. So here we are. Let's do that, but I'll also take you through with a couple other guitars as well. So here we are over on the amp itself. I am going to be wearing earplugs while doing this. Not so much for some of the lower volume settings, but the higher volume settings, sitting in the room with it is very loud. So I'm going to try to protect the old ears here. So as you see, the controls we went over already: presence, bass, middle, treble, master, and preamp. I'm in the low sensitivity input to start off with, and I'm on the high setting, the full 20 watt setting. I'll probably keep it there for most of the video. Once we get up into the higher gain, pushing this a little harder, I will switch between high and low just so you can hear the difference in tone and volume. So let's try out some settings on this and see how it sounds. Let's also see how that tone stack affects things as well. So if we bring some presence and treble down on those settings, what I really like about the tone stack is it seems to be quite usable between all of the different ranges that we have. Let's try diming everything and see what that does. This is a low sensitivity input. Let's also see how this sounds with a Strat style guitar. And now we can try with some P90s on my Vigier GV Wood P90. So there are some various tones we have on the low sensitivity input, but I think what everybody's really interested in hearing how these same settings would sound on the high sensitivity. How much gain do we have on tap, and how does it hold up once we push it into those upper gain ranges? Wow, so that is loud. Now that is on the high setting. So we're running at 20 watts now. So here is the difference when I go between the 20 watt and the 5 watt setting. And let's just crank this up a bit. I'm actually very impressed by how the sound stays very, very similar. Almost no change at all. It's just quieter. So very nice feature if you're in the studio, in your bedroom playing, and you do want some usable tone at a lower volume. It is very nice to have that ability to attenuate it down to the 5 watts. And to be honest with you, even if you want some great distorted tones, I could come over here, keep my preamp gain all the way up, my master maybe around 2 or 3. You do lose some of that push we get from the power section. Maybe it thins out a little bit. Even if I take my earplugs out at this volume here now, I can stand that. I can sit in the room with this and actually enjoy it. But it does sound a lot better when that is really pushed and cranked. So what do you guys think? I thought that would be a fun look at something different for my channel. Get away from the modelers for a bit. Let's go old school, straight into a beautiful Marshall tube amp. And I'm really blown away by this series. Great move by Marshall to make this smaller, lower wattage series that I think really opens up the accessibility of this amp to a lot more folks. Not only because of price, but also because of usability with the lower wattage and the ability to play it at 5 watts. So that was a lot of fun. I'm really happy to have this in my studio just for those times that I want to just plug in and let a good old real Marshall rip. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sharing your time with me. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some enjoyment or use out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.